Megavanan and welcome my friends to Elven Awakenings, chatting with the Elven Scholar. And now, to your guide to all things Elvish, Dr. Erendil Spindelellis, the Elven Scholar.
Once upon a time, in a forest rich in pine and oak, lived a young elf. He lived amongst his neighbors who were clothed in fur and feather, and found joy and peace with each sunrise, and silence in the evening light of the stars. He spent his days communing with his woodland brothers and sisters, and the nights in contemplation and meditation. Light shone upon him unstained from the mortal world, and he was happy. But as time passed, he became more aware of the land outside, filled with fear and despair, and he knew his time of living in the gentle woods was coming to an end, and his journey as a teacher was upon him. When the morning sun found him again, he walked out of the forest with nothing but the clothes on his back, and strode into the land of man, to teach and to be taught. For it is the way of all teachers that the student so often will be the better master. This is my story, and it is true. My name is Erendil, and I am the Elven Scholar. Megovan and my Elven, Fae, and Otherkin brothers and sisters. Today we are going to go ahead and talk about the topic of letting go. That seemed to be where the votes went from last week's show. We're going to talk about letting go and how to achieve finding out who you are, remembering who you are through baby steps. Now again, in Zen we prefer to have sudden enlightenment, but for many people, and I certainly get this, I've been there myself, it's through baby steps, some small steps to make as we begin to acknowledge more and more about who we are. So this episode is about baby steps and letting go, not letting the world tell us what to do. As many of you are aware, the world is pretty much gripped in fear, and unfortunately so much of it is unnecessary. As a doctor, I can tell you there's been a lot of things that we have not been told. So I'd like to talk about letting go of fear as part of what this show is about. And by doing so, we open ourselves up more to finding out and being able to see more clearly who we are. As I've mentioned before, all choices that we make in life, it's like two sides of a coin. You either choose each day, each moment that you go through life, you choose to make a choice out of fear, or you choose it out of love. Unfortunately, right now, the massive majority of people in the world are making choices out of fear. And I think that's because most people have not been taught about the sacredness and beauty and divinity and rarity of life and how special this life is. Unfortunately, so many people go through life and they live by the saying, well, you're born, you live, you die, and there's not a whole lot else in between, and there's certainly nothing else afterwards. And I can tell you from experience, there is so much more to this life. This life is such an incredible gift, and there is something afterwards as well. And we can make that choice each day, whether we're going to choose fear or love. And that's what you manifest. We talked about that in the last show about manifestation. It's what you are, the light that shines from you. If you choose to live a life of darkness, then that is what you will attract. And if you choose to live a life of light, that is what you will attract. And if you live in fear, well, fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe something long enough and you're negative enough, it very likely will happen. And there's the flip side. If you love enough, if you are open enough to the universe will respond. And again, like I talked about in manifestation, that will happen. Okay, so I'd like to talk about what I feel is probably the number one impediment towards letting go, towards being able to take those baby steps, towards finding out who you are inside, and in my case, or for Fae or for Otherkin, to find that elven or special spirit that lives within you. What is stopping most people from doing that? And of course, that is fear. Fear is the number one thing that drives most people, unfortunately, in this world. Fear of rejection, fear of not being like others, fear of being singled out. There's been study after study that shows that the reason that most people conform is because they don't want to stand out. They don't want to be noticed. They're afraid of being picked on or singled out, and so they rather would be in the shadows. I'm a longtime fan of Frank Herbert, a science fiction writer. I imagine quite a few of you are probably familiar with him. And, of course, my favorite series of books was the Dune series. And we're all happy, for a lot of us, that the new movie's come out. We're actually going to go ahead and watch it tonight. So the next clip is a nod to them, not meaning to be an advertisement, but a nod to them because for a long time I loved this one passage that's in there that is very specific to the whole subject of fear. And it's about fear being the mind killer. And if we defeat it, we find in the end that's all that's left is just ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and play a little clip here from the new movie Dune so you can listen to it, and I think you'll hear what I hear also, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some more.
What will you do?
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear, and I will permit it to pass over me. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
I don't know how many of you remember. It's a wonderful movie, kind of considered a cult classic now, Harold and Maude. Absolutely love this movie. Has so many wonderful messages in it, and for me it's one of my favorites because the entire soundtrack is from Cat Stevens. So in this movie there is a scene, it's actually called the flower scene, where Harold, who's like a 20-something-year-old, is fallen in love with just about to be an 80-year-old woman, and it's the things that she teaches him about life, to help him to let go and to let go of the fear and to just be who he is and not let his mother and the elite society tell him what he's supposed to be. It's a wonderful story of awakening. And in this flower scene, he is comparing himself to the flowers because he doesn't want to stand out. And what Maud says to him is absolutely beautiful, and this makes my point of how we think that we're alike all these other people when we are actually wonderfully unique, and that is one of the gifts that we have. So go ahead and hear for you real quick, and let's take a listen.
I should like to change into a sunflower most of all. They're so tall and simple. What flower would you like to be?
I don't know. One of these, maybe?
Why do you say that?
Because they're all alike.
Oh, but they're not. Look, see, some are smaller, some are fatter, some grow to the left, some to the right. Some even have lost some petals, all kinds of observable differences. You see, Harold, I feel that much of the world's sorrow comes from people who are this, yeah, allow themselves to be treated as that.
Well, I think it's fine building jumbo planes.
I could hardly agree more that people allow themselves to be treated and in fact encouraged and often mandated to be like everyone else when you are really unique and special. In all the universe, there is no other spirit soul like you. And so, through fear, people choose to behave as others. You know, the old Shakespeare saying, "To thine own self be true. Be who you are." You know, there's some wonderful studies out, wonderful books out that have been coming out lately about the confessions of those who are dying and the regrets that they had. And never once was there a regret that I didn't conform more. There are regrets almost always in not taking advantage of the moments that they have in this life, to let go of the expectations that others have of them, and to just cherish and enjoy this life that was given to you and to no one else. An excellent definition of fear I found within the cinema. This is during the Star Wars movie where the young Darth Vader is being grilled in front of the Jedi Council, basically, and Yoda's talking to him, trying to help him understand that fear will keep him from accomplishing what he wants to do, where he has to let go of things such as his fear for his mother and such. And I found it to be really apropos to what I'm trying to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and play that clip real quick, and then we'll go on from there. Have a listen, if you would.
How feel you?
Cold, sir.
Afraid, are you?
No, sir.
See through you. We can.
Be mindful of your feelings.
Your thoughts dwell on your mother.
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What has that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I sense much fear in you.
Okay, what about the reverse of that? How about let's take the other side of the coin, that love leads to hope. Hope leads to action, and action leads to healing of both yourself and the world. You can make that choice out of fear, or you can make that choice out of love. It's up to you, but remember, love leads to hope, hope leads to action, and action leads to healing. So we have that option every day to make that kind of choice. So in some ways, this discussion is a little bit negative sounding, like they're all doomed, and the world was not coming out of this any better than it was before. Well, recently I saw a very well-written dissertation on the web about 2 weeks ago with this one lady who basically came out and said very similar to what I'm saying now, but it sounded more doomsday. You think the world's going to get better, it's not going to get better, and in fact it's going to get worse because you've lost your freedoms and more freedoms are going to be taken away, and on and on. And the post on the thread where people were commenting said, okay, now I want to kill myself. Now I'm really depressed. Well, there's some truth in what she said, because this is human nature within a civilization, that the civilizations don't really progress on a spiritual level. People do. The civilization does not. There has never been at any time in human history that a civilization has ever lasted. And civilizations rise and fall, but the people themselves can grow and may get a little better each time. And that's what I'm hoping for here. You'll come out of this and you will have learned more about yourself. And then you can go forth and be a Johnny or Jane Appleseed and plant the next seed. And I'm hoping that there will come a day, be it a long time coming, and I haven't seen it yet, but I still believe in the Elven concept of hope, Estelle, that it will happen one day. And that is the 100th Monkey. It was an actual animal behavioral study done in Japan where they were looking at these monkeys, and they thought that they noticed that this one monkey learned how to do something. And then the next monkey came along and watched that monkey, and that monkey eventually learned how to do it. Eventually, here's this large group of monkeys in this one area that now knew this trick of hunting for food. Soon there were other groups of monkeys in other places of Japan, as if something magical had happened when they got to the 100th monkey. All of a sudden, all monkeys knew how to do this one trick, how to do this, and they knew this lesson. And I'm hoping that with each lesson that civilization goes through, a few more people learn, a few more, until we've hit that, in our case, the 100th elf. Eventually there will be the 100th elf, and everybody will know. And I hope for that one day. But for now, it's okay if the world doesn't become a better place. What happens is, do you become a better person? and that you go forward and do your part and plant those little cosmic seeds and help the world eventually grow to that place. It's okay. So let's get to the positive part of this discussion. What can we do? And this is an Elven radio show, so obviously I'm going to speak from an Elven perspective. So where do we start? Okay, we start with ourselves. We start with baby steps, one person at a time reawakening. Who we are, remembering our Elven selves. I've had many people ask how to get started in overcoming the negative events that keep appearing in our lives. They'll talk to me and they'll say, why do I keep repeating this? Why the same issue keeps coming up in my life over and over again? Why is the same event or trigger keep happening even though I don't feel like I have anything to do with it? Why do I keep attracting this type of situation? Well, there's an old saying, how others treat us is their karma. How we react is ours. In other words, whether it's reacting to someone else or to a particular event, it's how we react that dictates the future events. So once we learn to stop reacting, which basically means on an instinctive, emotional level, once we learn to stop reacting and to embrace each moment, embrace the moment with each lesson, and embrace each moment with love, we will be able to move on from that lesson and then move on to the next. For me, my life has been a great example of that. I've learned that I would keep repeating the same lesson over all these years until finally I let it go. I get it. It's okay. I will embrace the moment and learn from it. Again, people can embrace the very same event. One will walk away with negativity and fear and anger, and the other one will walk away with wisdom because they embrace the lesson, the moment. They learn from it, and it's over with. It's kind of like graduating from first grade. If I don't like to embrace first grade, if I don't embrace the lessons that first grade offers me, I'm going to keep taking first grade over and over again. But if I embrace first grade, if I embrace the lessons of finger painting and not eating glue, embrace those lessons and move on to second grade. That is the same way with your life on a spiritual and soul level. Embrace the moment, and then you'll be able to move on to the next. And again, another thing is what light shines within you will attract the light from outside of you and will bring it back. In other words, whatever is your predominant state, are you generally a very happy person, or are you generally a very sad or dark person? Whatever that predominance is, you may have moments of darkness or you may have moments of lightness, but whatever is the predominant, that is the type of situation and other individuals that you attract. So it's important to remember that you do the overall shine with light. Or is your light hidden in a shadow of fear? That is what will determine the overall course and growth of your life. Do you approach life with love, or do you approach it with fear? Do you shine your light forward, or do you let it remain hidden under the shadow of fear? Whatever choice you make, that is what you will attract, and that will determine the course of your life and the growth of your life. So let that Elven shine forth. Be that as a city on a hill shining so that others can see, that others can learn from. I've experienced that myself to make each day's potential be realized for the gift that it is. I know I've told you some of this before, because it's actually in our Elven School in the course on manifestation that I talked about in the last episode. And a lot of people will go, I can't manifest this or I can't manifest that. Well, first of all, right off the bat, you've already set yourself up. You've decided it can't happen. I won't go through the whole story here, but there was a time, a very long time ago, when, as I mentioned to you before, I lived in a forest. I was happy to be there, and it was a grand time, but I knew that I had other things to do, other things to learn, so one day I just chose to walk out of the forest. And as I've mentioned before, I had nothing but the clothes on my back. I walked out of the forest, and by the time the sun had set that day, I had a job and I had a place to stay. And from there, I built on it until I am here, to where I am right now. And occasionally I would go back into the forest for healing or quiet, but that's what happened. All right, imagine if I had believed at that moment before I walked out, well, I'm walking into a very strange world, very non-elven world. This is not going to work. I'm obviously going to starve to death, or it's just not going to work out. And it wouldn't have worked out. It would not have happened. But I took the lessons I learned of letting go of the fear, of letting go of what others will tell me when I'm out walking amongst them, and not letting them control me or rule my thoughts, to darken my life by accepting their darkness. And because I didn't do that, I've had a wonderful experience being here. If you believe, you can manifest it, and that's the elven light of hope that shines from you. You can do it also because this is not something that only I can do. Anyone can do it. It is up to us each day if we are going to hold on to the past, if we're going to hold on to the future. You know, there's an old saying that says depression is when you're holding on to the past, and anxiety is when you're holding on to the future. I really love some of the Zen precepts that go, there is no such thing as time. And in a future show, I will actually do an episode on what is time and does time even exist, and I will come at it from an Elven point of view as well as from a scientific point of view. And I was originally, before I became a doctor, I was accepted at a university for astrophysics. When I was a child, I would play for hours and hours and hours. I know I was a very big nerd. Play for hours and hours with mathematics, computing, physics, and quantum physics, and things of that nature. And I've learned a lot of things about time. And one of the most important things is it doesn't matter. Even if you accept time, what's in the past is the past. What's in the future doesn't exist. Within Zen, and I am a Zen elf, within Zen we know that all there exists is right now. This is all that exists. In all the universe and all of what has ever happened or ever will happen in the future, there is nothing but right now. Therefore, there's really nothing to hold on to. The world will tell you that you can't be an elf or a fae or an otherkin, or that you're a sinner if you're pagan, or even D&D playing is witchcraft. You'll be told all these things. In the end, all you can do is walk your own path at your own pace, no matter what anyone else tells you. Is that path a healthy one for you? I don't know that. I know that it's probably where you need to be right now, and obviously if things are not going very healthy for you or very well, there is still something on that path that you have to learn, something that you still need to get from it that you haven't gotten now. And until you eventually do, those hard negative lessons, they have a purpose. But at any moment, you can let it all go. You can let it go, and you can move on, and you can become who you want to be. Because remember, if you choose to be an elf, or a fae, or otherkin, pagan, whatever the case may be, because you already are. You already are that. You know, a lot of people go, well, enlightenment requires this big process of waking up, and it's a whole lot of techniques that I'm supposed to go through. And they think that enlightenment is a state of being. That there are those who are enlightened, and there are those who are not enlightened. Kind of like there are those who are Buddhas, and then there is everyone else. You know, sentient beings and Buddhas. And what's one of the most beautiful things of Zen is that there's really in the long run, there is no such thing as enlightenment. All enlightenment is a realization. Oh, I get it. I already am. I'm already here. I already am who I am. Now I know people will say, well, that sounds easy. Okay, well then I just already am. I am who I am. The problem is that no matter how many times you may say that, you don't believe it. You deep down inside, you don't believe it. And that's important, is do you believe it or not? And it has to be a belief that goes beyond intellect. It has to go beyond emotions or mental. It goes beyond all of that. And the neat thing is that when you do wake up, when you do have that realization of who you are, you won't walk around saying, I'm enlightened, or I've awakened myself and I know who I am now. Because you'll know that there's no such thing, that everyone already is that they just don't know it. And the biggest impediment to all that is fear. Not being able to let go of the fear, let go of the unknown. That they're afraid that at least it's something for me to hold on to. I've noticed with a lot of my patients over the years that for many of them, Dr. Christopher would say that there were 3 kinds of patients who can't be healed. Okay. Those who don't follow the program, all right? That's called compliancy with a doctor, not being compliant, not following the program, not taking your meds or following the protocols or going to therapy, whatever the case may be. And then there's number 2, hypochondria. And that's what I'll talk about here in just a moment. Hypochondria. They don't want to get better. And then the third is the hardest of them all, and I've unfortunately had these cases where for the patient it's just their time to go. They're tired, they just want to go to sleep. And that can be really hard as a doctor or any other kind of healthcare provider, because you know they can be healed, you know you can do something for them, but they're just tired. They just want to let go and go to sleep and rest for a while. But it's the second one I'm talking about here, the hypochondria. The lesson I learned from hypochondriac patients, and I'm not demeaning them, but it is a lesson I learned, is that for them, negative attention is better than no attention at all. I've seen it in marriages and relationships where the person didn't feel that they were getting enough attention, whether they were or not, from their significant partner. And so in order to get that attention, they would get sick. Sometimes really sick, very often not sick. And they would actually come to me and I would work with them, and in a very short order I would find out these people are not actually wanting to get better. Either they weren't sick at all, or they would sabotage. Every time they started to heal, they would sabotage it. Because they were afraid of letting go of the attention. Even if it's negative attention, they were afraid of letting it go. And that's so much of what we see in the world today. There were actually some studies done. It was fascinating. You would think it would be the opposite, but there were some studies done that showed that fear is so prevalent in this world that when people were offered the positive side of things, saying, okay, it's not as bad as it seems, they still ended up choosing the darker side. They still ended up choosing the negative, the fear-based. Now, I know for many of them, if they learn and they realize that, oh, it's not as bad, the world's not as bad, or their lives are not as bad as they thought, then they have to admit that all these years they've been wrong. And it also means that they have to take personal responsibility for their actions. Now, as I've said before, as elves, it is our job to co-create with Eru, to co-create with God, to make this world a magical and mythical paradise. And with that comes responsibility. And for so many people today, they'd rather stay asleep. That's too much work. I don't want to do that. It would mean that I can't just lay here and be a vegetable. And unfortunately, I've seen so much of that over my 20-odd years of practice. But we can let go at any time. There comes a time for many people when they just get tired of being afraid, to where they go, you know what else have I got to lose? I'm going to accept that there is something greater than what I'm being told there is, that life is so much more precious and sacred. Because what have I got to lose? You know, the old cliche, people will often come and go, oh, okay, you believe in God, or you believe in this spiritual belief or this religion. And they go, that's all foolishness. It's poppycock. How can you believe that? You're wasting your life. You know, it's the old cliche. All right, you might be right. You might very well be right. Okay? here's the choice. Here's what could happen. If I'm right, then should I pass on one day, I will see a new lesson, a new chapter. Okay? If you're right, then the worst thing I did was I lived a life in peace, in quiet, in peace of mind, because I had hope, even if it was false hope. It gave me hope and it gave me peace. I didn't live my life in fear. Because one of the things I've noticed so often with patients when they're getting ready to pass away, most of them die in fear. Rampant, horrible, dark fear of what's coming in the next few minutes. And then I've seen those patients that were calm and left with grace and peace, because in their hearts they knew something else was on the other side. And that belief that they had, whether I agreed with it or not, gave them peace, gave them a gentle passing. Well, you don't have to die to experience that peace. We can have that now. As elves, it's called Estelle. And I've talked about this before. It means faith, but like I said, it also means the ultimate trust in Eru that everything will work out okay. It will work out. And we have all the time in the world to work it out. If we have to keep doing this over and over and over again, we will. But that's one of the great beauties and grace of this universe. You will be given the chance to do it over and over and over again. But why keep repeating it? Why keep making the same mistakes over and over again? Because you're making them out of fear. Maybe take a chance. Maybe go, you know what? Maybe the Elven Scholar's right. And there is something beautiful and divine and elven within me. And I can take part in something so much greater in this universe. I can be a co-creator. And if I'm wrong, then you've had a great adventure. But if I'm right, you let go of the past, you let go of the future, and you live right now. All right. So if we can just learn to let go, especially of the fear, and allow ourselves to be who we truly are within, without fear of reprisal, but to know that that's what we were born to do. As always, I speak from an elven perspective, and so as elves, it is our place to make this world a paradise, one in which the laws of creation are able to be manifested in our everyday lives rather than just simply in stories and myths. You want to be an elf? Be an elf every day. Do something elven each day. A forest bath, a healthier, more compassionate life, elven art and music. Surround yourself in this. Meditation, learn new healing skills. And most of all, let each day choose love over fear. As elves, we can remember who we are and where we come from. We are the children of this world, the earth. We and the world are one. Elian the Quain, that is elven for all is one. Maybe now more than ever, the world needs all of us to awaken to our true elven selves, the stewards of this world, of earth, of Arda. It means to find our true selves and reach for that full potential, to realize the oneness we have with the land, the sea, and the air, with our mother, the earth. It means to remember that we were created for one reason, to be companions with Eru, with God, and co-create with the universe, to take our place as healers of the world and to bring it back to what it was always meant to be, the paradise sung from the very beginning of the universe. All right, I'm going to go ahead and tie this up. I've got a little saying I wrote some years back about what can happen if we let go of the fear that resides in so many of us, and to allow that child to come out. It is often seen where children will play with their imaginations and let their fantasies take flight. The older folks will look upon them with gentle smiles, thinking how sweet the sight, but one of little worth, as it is simply the flights of fancy, and one day they will grow up and take upon themselves the yoke of adult responsibilities. But from the dreams of little ones can find birth and reality. Let them play, for within those that enjoy playing at being elves, let them play. Sometimes, if we play something long enough and believe hard enough, we become what we dream. Let the elven children come out to play. Maybe they will stay. All right, we're going to get ready to break here in just a moment. I wanted to make a couple of announcements here. The next episode is a fun episode. I hope you enjoy it. There's not going to be a whole lot heavy in that one. Next week is our Halloween special. So again, from an elven perspective, I'm going to delve into the dark side of some of the elven and fae and otherkin legends that have spread throughout the world. And we're going to have a good Halloween time next Sunday with dark legends. All right. So we're going to go ahead and during the upcoming live call-in section, so the phone line will be active here in just a few minutes. And like I said, in just a couple minutes, it'll be live. And go ahead, and at that time, you'll be able to, if you want to call in with a question or a comment, you are welcome to call in at 442-227-2187. That's 442-227-2187. That is a U.S. number, so you may incur more expenses if you're calling outside of the U.S. or Canada. If you would like to go ahead and still post a question or comment, I will be checking the email during the second half of the show, and I will respond to your questions and comments, and you can email me at radio@elvenscholar.org. radio@elvenscholar.org. You can send me a message or comment or question. I will respond to it during the second half of the show. While we wait for calls, and I've got some questions already to field, but while we wait, I'm going to be talking about a very fun subject, and that is the 5 top questions asked of elves. I think you're going to have fun with it. We're going to count down from 5 up to the number 1 question. So see if you can think about what some of those questions might be, and we will be going over those in the second half of the show. All right. So again, it's time to wake up. It's time to let go of those fears and know that the universe will be there for us. I always like to often allude back to Lord of the Rings, and so I think I will let Gimli close out the first half of this show before we take a station break, and then after that we will be right back. So thank you, Gimli, and here he is.
Certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
Okay, we're going to take a short station break, and when we get back, we will be taking callers for our Chatting with the Elven Scholar. This is Elven Awakenings, Chatting with the Elven Scholar on Heroes and Mortals Radio. We'll be right back. When you go to college, you expect the high halls and libraries filled with old books. But much has changed, and in today's world, online schools have exploded in popularity. Please join us at Llambin Gomor, the world's first online college with a nod towards elven and humankind alike. With Llambin Gomor, you can start a new career or a new life in the holistic health field, learn a new elven language, study history and culture, or the environment. We believe everyone deserves an affordable education with personalized attention. We provide full certifications in the following fields: home herbalist, Reiki levels 1 through master, nutritionist, first aid, Elven history and culture, Elven languages with Quenya and Sindarin, anatomy, botany, introduction to archaeology, ecology, astronomy, Elven laws of manifestation and meditation, and we also offer full diplomas in the fields of medical herbalist and medical nutritionist. More classes are being added. Many students have found new careers in the above fields. These classes are sponsored and designed by Tree of Life Holistic Wellness Center, which was the largest naturopathic medical center in the state of California. You can pay for your classes outright or join a low-cost monthly subscription, which allows you to take as many classes as you like at one time while you maintain the subscription. This college was founded to give you a chance to expand your horizons while believing in who you are. All classes are certified and are aimed at helping you start a new life and a new career. Adult study programs for both elves and humankind alike, designed specifically for you. You can find us at www.elvenscholar.org. Discover what is inside of you. Be who you are at Lambain Gamor, the Elven School of Lore Masters. All right, we're back. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and open up the lines now. So let me fix that. All right, so lines are active, but in the meantime, I would like to go ahead and talk about a couple of subjects. One is I've got some questions that have been sent to me from some of the listeners, so I'd like to cover those. And I'd also like to go ahead and talk about the top 5 questions that elves are often asked. And believe me, we researched these, and most of them basically are from personal experience. We have indeed gotten these questions before many times, so let's go ahead. I think I'd like to go ahead and start with those, and then we will go ahead and field some questions. Okay, again, you can call us at 442-227-2187. 442-227-2187. Again, that is a U.S. number, so if you're calling from outside of the U.S. or Canada, you may incur some costs. So you can always leave us a message after the show or during the week, or you can email me at radio@elvenscholar.org. All right. So what are the top 5 questions that we have been asked? And we actually get them quite often. So some of them may sound kind of silly to you, but these are actual questions. So let's start with the low one, and we're going to go up to the number 1. Number 5, how do you become an elf? We've actually gotten that one quite a bit from people that I think people that had more of, they've read a lot of books, and they've fallen in love with Lord of the Rings and the Narnia series, or they've been heavy into cosplay, which these are all wonderful. They're all great ways to kind of introduce you into maybe an alternative way of thinking. But my good news is that depending on the persuasion you have, you can say elf, or you can say fae, or you can say otherkin, pagan, whatever you'd like to say. But if we're going to talk specifically about an elf, you already are. You already are an elf. It is already that which is your innate nature within your soul. Again, it goes back to kind of like the subject of enlightenment. I know I just said a few minutes ago that there really is no such thing as enlightenment. You know, Buddha said when he became enlightened, he actually gained nothing. He learned nothing by becoming enlightened, by becoming the Buddha. But what he did get rid of was stress, anxiety, depression. But other than that, what he really found was he already was. He was already there. You already are an elf. You're already there. All you have to do is believe it and start being an elf every day, finding out what that means for you. We're going to cover that question a little bit more about, how everyone perceives their being an elf. But it's up to you. You already are. All you have to do is accept it and believe it and open yourself up to the possibility. All right, so we're really all elves if we just accept it. And that kind of leads into the number 4 question. Do elves exist? Well, obviously, if you are already an elf, and even if you don't know it, elves exist. The question comes because, obviously, we've talked about this in the first episode, the whole concept of Elven has been so distorted over the centuries. As I mentioned before about the history, elves were considered these great, almost godlike magical beings. And then as time went on and Christianity came in and turned elves into demons, and then after that they started to be cute. Oh, we got a call, so let's go ahead and field that.
Call from
Okay, you are on the air. Can I help you?
Hi, this is Nasadel. McGowan.
Wonderful to hear you. This is Nasidil. This is a wonderful elven sister of ours. What can I do for you today, sweetie?
I was just wondering, for people that are having trouble letting go, is it to them like looking into a dark precipice, like a dark space, not knowing where they're going to end up?
Oh.
Kind of like, and they keep on going to their comfort zone?
It's,
like a woman keeps on going to her batterer or whatever, that they're afraid to reach out and really find out who they are?
You are absolutely correct. And in cases like that, and that is very common, we've seen them with a lot of our patients as well, it's a self-proposed prison. They put themselves into a prison. But yes, I get it. I understand. They are also, it's a way to protect themselves. But unfortunately, what happens, it was originally meant to be, thousands of years ago, that was a way to temporarily, momentarily protect our psyche, to keep ourselves from being overwhelmed. But it was only meant to be a survival technique that was only supposed to last for a very short time. And back then, we had the tribe, we had the villages who would all band together and help us, but we don't have that anymore. What we have now are neighbors that we can live next to for 20, 30 years and never even know their names. And so we don't have that outside support. What we do have is okay, you need to go, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing because I've done therapy with patients before, and there's definitely validity in it, but you end up talking to strangers, and while sometimes, again, that can be a very healthy thing to do because you don't want to express what's going on to someone who knows you well. But, this takes me back to Crocodile Dundee. You remember that old movie?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, in Crocodile Dundee, the woman who's the other star of the show, she takes him to New York, and they learn to expose him to the world, and so they can talk about this great crocodile hunter. And then they go back to Australia, and she's just casually saying, yeah, I've been to a therapist for like 20 years, and he's like, crikey, why did you do that for so long? Well, that's what we do in New York. And she said, what do you do here? Well, I tell my mate, and my mate tells everyone else in the town, and soon it's out and it's all over with. And then we all deal with it. We don't have that anymore. And so what should have been a temporary survival mode becomes a way of life to where people don't want to come out. But, in the end, you have to come out. Sooner or later, you can't live in a box. You can't live in a shell and think that you're living. You may be surviving, but you're not thriving. So, Nasadil, you are absolutely correct. That is something that happens, and it is the reason many don't let go. But in the end, we still have to eventually, just for our mental health, we have to let go. So
you'd go crazy, you would think.
Oh, absolutely. And because you're on the phone, I've got something to say. Okay. Was that it for you for your question?
Oh, that's good, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to hang up here in a minute, but while I've got you on the phone still, Nasedil is a wonderful elven sister of ours, and she goes to Lambengomor, the Elven Scholar lore masters. And she's a wonderful student. I can brag and brag and brag on her. But she's also, again, a dear elven sister. Well, she entered our Lambengomor, the writers contest. And so I was going to I haven't announced anything yet, but I am going to announce something here real quick. Okay.
I've got chills.
Okay, the number one first place grand prize winner for the writers contest is Nasedil Patricia Weiser. So we just wanted. So we wanted to announce that you are the winner and the first place, and then we will be announcing second, third place here soon. Your story was absolutely incredible, and if you don't mind during our Halloween, even though it wasn't dark and gloomy, during our Halloween special next Sunday, is it okay with you if I read your story on the air?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, well, it's well earned. We thank you for the submission to the school. It was a wonderful, gentle story. My wife went on and on about it, that you would make a wonderful writer for children's stories. So something
I'm gonna cry.
well, something for you to think about. Alrighty, sweetheart. We so appreciate you. I'm going to go on to the next question. You have a wonderful, blessed rest of your Elven day. Namadi. Love you too. All right, so that was Nase Deal. And okay, before I get back, I've got another question. Okay, this is from Sean in Canada. And he said, thank you for the quote on fear, especially the one from Frank Herbert's Dune. Would you mind elaborating on how you can think positively and to counteract fear? Oh, that's a heavy one. Okay, Sean, you do ask the good questions too. Sean is a wonderful elven brother of ours as well. How do you counteract the fear? Yes, because if I mentioned in another show and on YouTube, we have so many voices clamoring for attention in our head, and there's only one. And, you know, throughout history and philosophy, that's been called, in religion, that's been called the still small voice. Well, that's the problem. It's a still small voice. It's very quiet and gentle. And the world itself is full of many, many voices that are clamoring for attention, and they are not still, and they are not small. And they are constantly wanting our attention and to divert us to something else. So, as I gave the advice before, I think I still would do that, is it sounds very easy. Some people would translate this into meditation. I would translate this into prayer. I would translate it into meditation. Whether you are praying or whether you are meditating, what that does is it allows you to calm the mind. And when you very first start practicing that, Sean, and I know you're aware of this, you did great in the school as well. When you begin to practice meditation, it is a type of meditation where you are calming and quieting the mind. And even in the very first stages of learning to do this, you're trying to be calm, but the voices keep popping up, and you accidentally give them attention. And what is best to do, we learn it in Zen, is to just ignore it. Don't try to make it go away. Don't try to listen to it. Just let it go, like a breeze blowing a leaf over your head. Just let it go. In time, the voices will quiet down, and eventually you will only hear that one still small voice. There is no quick, easy answer to saying how do you quiet the negativity that the world is bombarding us with every day. But it will happen over time. Like anything else, it just takes practice. And it takes faith, knowing that, oh, what if I listen to that? What if I finally do listen to that still small voice? Is it the one? Or is it another one of those other voices that are clamoring for attention and I got it wrong? Well, you are going to get it wrong most likely. I still get it wrong sometimes. You're going to get it wrong, but eventually, through the lessons, you'll eventually be able to tell who's who. You know, it's the old thing, you know, the tree by the fruit that it produces. Did it produce healing, or did it just produce more chaos? It just takes practice, and eventually you will gain faith in your own self, and you'll know when it's the correct voice. It also helps to turn off the TV. It also helps to quit listening to the news, and surrounding yourself with beauty and joy, so that at least those are some of the voices you hear, instead of all those clamoring for your attention and for your conformity. I hope that helps. I have been there, and I'm still there quite a bit, so I do understand, and I hope that helps. Just learn to quiet the mind. Eventually only one voice will come forth. All right. So, okay, so I will get back. I have, it appears, a voicemail. So we're going to go ahead and take a chance and play this, play the voicemail real quick and see who it was. Okay. All right.
Hello, Elven Scholar. This is Messadow.
Oh, okay, that was the one we just heard. Okay. All right. And looks like it was, okay, so she looks like she took a little bit to get through to us. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to cover some more of these top 5 questions, and then I have a very, very important question I want to answer from another dear elven sister, Kashira. Okay, and I will talk about her in just a minute. Okay, so I was just covering the topic of, do elves exist? Well, obviously, if you're an elf, elves exist. Anybody can be an elf or recognize that within themselves. All right, and we're going to talk about, well, again, how do I manifest it? And actually, that's one of the questions that Kashira asked, so I'll be talking about that in a minute. Number 3, and this one's probably going to cause a little turmoil because it's my personal belief, but again, there are 7.5 billion humans on this world. So there are at least 7.5 billion ways to the light, to realize, to recognize who you are. So understand that the answer I'm about to give is mine, and it works for me, and I've seen it work for others, and I've seen it work for my patients in my medical practice, but it's up to you. Number 3, what diet is for elves? I have gotten a lot of flack over this one in the past because I have a very strong belief that as meant to be that we are co-creators with this world, it means we are to walk a gentle path, and that we are to leave gentle footprints and not leave devastation and death in our path. So for me, it's being a vegan. Being a vegan is what I believe because I find it's the most compassionate path. I've been a vegan for many decades, and I did it originally for compassion and not for health. Now for my patients, most of them become vegan for health, and I understand that. But I made that choice out of compassion. I found out that as the byproduct of this, it was an extremely healthy lifestyle for myself, for what I do. You each must make your own decisions on what path you walk, and what kind of contribution or compassion do you want to express towards this world. For me, the diet is a vegan diet, one of compassion and love and care for them. People will say, well, vegans, insects still die because of the farming and such and so forth. And I could have a whole show on this, and I suppose I will someday. But being vegan doesn't mean nothing suffers. Being vegan means that we do our best to diminish the amount of suffering that we cause on this world, to the best that we can. All right, number 2. The number 2 question that often gets asked of elves: what religions do elves have? What is an elven religion? Okay, I've had some flack over this answer in the past, and probably will get some here, but I can answer this according to Tolkien. I can answer this according to so many other writers. And I will answer it according to myself, the Elven Scholar. To me, there's 2 different things. There's spirituality and there's religion, and I think that they are 2. Unfortunately, while they can overlap, they don't do very well overlapping in this world because people take such strong stances in one direction or another and have a hard time meeting in the middle. All right. Spirituality is when I hold a particular belief, but it doesn't become a doctrine. It doesn't become inhibitory. It becomes something that fulfills my life and gives me a direction in my path. Now, a lot of you may disagree with this, but for me, religion, and not all religious people are this way. So you don't need to call me and go, oh, I'm not that way. I get it. I'm talking about overall standard definition of religion and the way so many governmental, and I'm talking about religious governmental bodies do, is it becomes a bureaucracy of spirituality. They took some wonderful, beautiful spiritual concepts and added doctrine and rules behind them and precepts and way that you are supposed to live. Again, there are 7.5 billion humans on this earth. Each human must decide for themselves which path works best for them. And if that's Christian or Muslim or Hebrew or pagan, what works for you at this moment in your life? Will you stay that way? You may be. As I told in one of my older videos on my YouTube channel, there are many, many, many tools that we have. And for the moment, that particular tool is very valuable to us. But there may very well come a time when that tool, while the tool is not bad or evil or good in and of itself, it is no longer useful. and so I move on. So for now, whatever tool works for you is great for you. For me, I prefer to be spiritual. So Tolkien, I think, mentioned this once before. There were no temples with elves. There were no religious buildings or churches. For us, the cathedral is a tall tree, and the sky is the ceiling of our church building. Our religion, if you want to say it, is the world that Eru gave us to co-create within. It is nature itself. And being within a forest or in the desert or on the middle of the ocean, that is our cathedral, that is our temple. And in the end, the temple is also you. Because even Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not outside necessarily, it's within you. All right, so I don't wax too religious here. Let's go to the last question, the number one question. Do elves have pointed ears? All right, again, 7.5 billion humans. All right, 7.5 billion choices. Okay, for myself, it's not necessary. Yeah, the shows, a lot of the movies show them, and then that's great. If for you an elf has a pointed ear, that's great. There are actually humans that have slightly pointed ears, and there's humans that have very round ears. But the round or the pointed doesn't make them a human or not a human. It's just one of their characteristics. It's interesting, the whole pointed ear concept came from people trying to demonize elves. Elves were not always throughout human history shown to have pointed ears. But pointed ears are an animalistic type thing, like dogs and cats and so many others have pointed ears. So they're connected with wild animals, unpredictable, primal, feral. And so elves were given pointed ears because they were shown to be primal and feral and unpredictable. And in some cases evil, because they attached pointed ears to the devil as well, and to demons. Tolkien was questioned about this, and he said, no, I never said that elves had pointed ears. He said, if anything, and this is interesting how he said this, he said their ears were leaf-shaped, at most, mildly leaf-shaped. So if you want to have pointed ears, have pointed ears. If you don't. But that doesn't make an elf any more than round ears makes a human. Okay, so that was the number one question. Do elves have pointed ears? All right, I'd like to field a couple of quick questions here, and then we're going to be signing off. These questions are really important. This was from Kashira. She's a dear elven sister of ours, and she has the YouTube channel, The Arcane Anthemium of Elven Sorcery. So if you want, she's got a few videos on there. Please go check her out and hit the like button and subscribe if you would. She's a sweetheart with a kind soul. She wanted to post a couple of questions to me that I thought were very, very important, especially nowadays with all the divisiveness that's going on. So I'm going to read to you exactly what she said. I'm not trying to get into one thing or another. I'm reading this for a reason from an elven point of view, and we'll get to it. All right, she goes, what would you say to those in the LGBTQ or the people of color community who may be nervous about prejudice if they join the elven community? Do you see this as an inclusive community? What an awesome question. You're going from one community, meaning the elven community, who nothing persecuted like those of LGBTQ or POC are. But we still experience a lower level of persecution. And then you've got those with the LGBTQ and POC who are obviously persecuted as well. Do we go from one to another? All I can tell you is I have never in my life seen a community more open-minded, more gentle and loving than the elven community when it comes to those kinds of differences. All right. Oh, yeah, there's still divisiveness within the elven community that my form of elven is better than yours, or you're wrong and I'm right. And I see a lot of that. All right. But when we're talking about the innate nature of an individual, whether you are gay or straight or white or black or brown, it doesn't matter. That is so inconsequential in general to the elven community. We don't care. We don't care about that. And I mean that in a good way, that that doesn't define a person. My wife and I, our son, when he was around 21, I guess about 18, not 19, 20 years old, he came out and he told us, and he said, I've got something very serious to tell you. And he originally told my wife first. And when he was on the phone with her, he said, I got something important to say. And she was all nervous and scared, like, oh, you're going to tell me you have cancer or something like that. And he came out and he says, well, I'm gay. Okay, well, she was greatly relieved about that and happy that it wasn't something that wasn't a big deal to us. I get it. I get it that it was a big deal to him. It was very scared. Is his parents going to accept him? So many other people in the world don't. And I didn't know about it. I was at the clinic at the time. And then when I came home, she said, our son has got something to tell us. I said, all right. And she said, well, he's gay. I said, oh, what's for dinner? It's not that I didn't care, but that didn't define my son. And, we talked over the years that it's not whether you're X generation or you're gay or you're straight or you're military or ex-military. You're a son, and you are who you are. And all these other things, they are a part of you. Absolutely. They're stories, part of the story of your life. And they're important, but they don't define you. You are you, and they are parts of you. Like your finger doesn't define you. Your finger is a part of you. And these are all very important, but they don't define you. And I can comfortably say within the Elven community, I have never seen people be divisive over something like that. Okay, the other question was, what advice can you give regarding coming together as a community when there will be inevitable disagreements on certain aspects of what Elven is? What traits do you believe you must have to be an elf? What traits do you believe all elves have? What do you believe or not believe are Elven traits? Okay, that's a long question, and I'll probably get to more of that in another show. Again, I go back, and I'm repeating myself multiple times in this episode. There are over 7.5 billion humans in this world, and there are over 7.5 billion paths to enlightenment. Therefore, there is very likely going to be 7.5 billion different elves. What I can say is that I believe is a defining characteristic of elves, if anything. And then after that, whether they have blue eyes or green eyes or whatever, I don't really care. The defining characteristics to me is a great love for the world and a desire, an urge, a calling to be a co-creator with this world, to be a part of its healing, to want to express that and to find an endearing, overwhelming love of nature and of life. That's the most common, if I were to say, common traits of being an elf. After that, it's up to you. And like I said before, if you want to wear a suit of clothes or a suit of armor, it's whatever works for you. But do you take on the mantle of being a co-creator with this world? Do you take on the love of nature and the connection with it, and to want to have that greater and to share it with others and to be part of the healing of this world? That's an elf to me. And after that, it's up to you. Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for now. We're getting ready to go to one of my favorite parts of the show, and that is story time. I love this part of the story. I've actually heard good feedback from other people. Story time is wonderful. I like to give a parable, something with some kind of message in it, because that's how humans have taught each other for thousands of years. They taught through stories. So I have a wonderful story coming up, and it is the story of the brick. And it's about letting go, about karma and about letting go. So it's apropos to what the show was about today. Remember, next week it is Halloween, so we will be doing our special dark Elven legend and Fae and Otherkin myths and stories from around the world. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll get to the story time, and I hope you enjoy the story. We come to that moment in our show when it is time for storytelling. Time for me to give a little parable with some kind of special meaning. And I do try to make sure that it is connected with the theme of the day. So The theme of today was, again, about letting go in baby steps, about realizing who you are and remembering that. And usually, for many people, it happens in baby steps. And Zen, we often like to say that it can happen in a moment's notice, and it indeed can. But with most people not prepared for that, most of them will do it in baby steps, little by little, until they're ready for that moment when they're able to realize and reawaken who they are, to their elven, fae, otherkin, whatever soul it may be for you in particular. And like I like to say, everyone has their own path, and we all walk it at our own pace. Well, this parable is the parable of the brick. It's an old story about karma. And it's very easy when listening to this how it can be connected with letting go. So many of us are attached to our karma, to what others tell us we should do, and we're not able to let go and go, we're okay. We're not contaminated. We're not corrupted. We are perfect in and of who we are, and if we could just truly realize that, we could let things go. We could let that karma go. We could let that brick go. I love this story, so I hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back after the story. Enjoy.
A young student approached his guru one day and said, "Master, you have spoken so much about karma, but I do not yet understand it. How can I truly learn?" The guru smiled and gestured for the student to follow. The two walked silently to the edge of the village where workers were busily engaged in making bricks for a house. The two stood and watched the activity of the brickmakers for some time, and the guru asked, "Now, do you understand karma?" "No, master," the student replied. The guru paused and slowly nodded his head. He cleared his throat. "What are the workers doing?" "Making bricks," the student responded. "Very good. And what happens to the bricks once they are made?" asked the guru. "They're put in the stack," the student said. "And then?" the guru asked. "Well, they're used to build a house," the student responded, getting more agitated because he could not see what a single brick had to do with karma. The exchange continued, elaborating on every step of how and where the bricks were made, until finally the guru sighed and turned to his student. He leaned over and picked up a freshly made brick and handed it to the youth. "Here, carry this brick with you everywhere you go. Do not put it down under any circumstances. Do you understand?" "Yes," said the student. "Good. Return to me with the same brick in a year's time," exclaimed the guru. A year later to the day, the student returned, brick in hand, to the guru. The youth was barely able to contain his frustration. "Master, I have done exactly as you told me. I have carried this brick with me everywhere, and it has nothing more than caused aggravation and a nuisance among several other things I will not mention in your holy presence. And I have learned nothing at all about karma." The guru chuckled. "Did you set the brick down at any time?" he asked. "No, master, I carried it everywhere," the student exclaimed. The guru smiled. "Ah, now do you understand karma?" Karma is one of those things in the West that is seldom understood truly, as it has been passed down to us through translation after translation. While the basic understanding states that whatever we do will eventually return to us, the actual philosophy is much deeper rooted. This parable speaks to the burdens and choices we carry with us and how they can affect us in later life if we don't take time to work through them. Just as the tiny brick is used to make the foundation of a house, even the smallest and most seemingly insignificant event or act can have huge effects on our future and lives if we aren't aware. Perhaps this parable even speaks to the cyclical nature of the universe. Maybe there's an echo here of the whole holding on to a glass idea, where initially a glass of water is easy to pick up, but the longer that you hold on to it, the heavier it seems to become to us. Perhaps even the smallest of choices that we make can be carried with us for long times. Now, the student could have put the brick down at any time, but they remained true to their word and hopefully learned the lesson the guru was teaching. While karma is often presented as something we carry over between lifetimes, perhaps the silver lining here is that maybe clearing our karmic baggage is as easy as choosing to let go of the brick. And by letting go, we simply become part of a new cycle.
All right, it's time for thought for the day. So I just want to go ahead and take a couple of minutes here out and pass on a wonderful old tale that I recently learned within the Japanese folklore genre. This is the Japanese folktale of the Selfish Scholar. Basically a short story about how there is a difference between contamination and corruption. It may one thing to get contaminated by the environment and by other people's emotions and such, and it can affect us, but does it corrupt us? There's a difference here. And so this is an old folk tale about the selfish scholar who learned that lesson. In ancient Kyoto, a devout Shinto scholar lived a simple life, but he was often distracted from his prayers by the bustling city. He felt that his neighbors were polluting his soul, and he sought to perform some kind of personal harai, a purification ritual that would cleanse his body and his mind. He decided to travel to the revered Hiei shrine. The trip was an arduous climb that took all day, but he was glad for the solitude it afforded him, and the peace he felt upon returning home was profound. The scholar was determined to maintain this clarity for as long as possible, and resolved to make this pilgrimage another 99 times. He would walk the path alone, ignoring any distractions in his quest for balance, and never straying from his purpose. The man was true to his word, and as the days stretched into weeks, he walked through driving rain and searing sun. Over time, his devotion revealed the invisible world of spirits, which exist alongside of our own. He began to sense the kami, which animated the rocks underfoot, the breeze that cooled him, and the animals grazing in the fields. Still, he spoke to no one, spirit or human. He was determined to avoid contact with those who had strayed from the path and became polluted with kagare. This taboo of defilement hung over the sick and deceased, as well as those who defiled the land or committed violent crimes. Of all the thrusts of the scholar's quest for spiritual purity, kagare was by far the greatest. After paying his respects for the 80th time, he set out for home once more. But as darkness fell, he began to hear strained sobs in the night air. The scholar tried to push forward and ignore the moans, but the desperate cries overwhelmed him. Grimacing, he left his path to follow the sound to its source. He soon came up to a cramped cottage with a woman crumpled outside. Filled with pity, the scholar implored the woman to share her sorrow. She had explained that her mother had just died, but no one would help her with the burial. At that news, his heart sank. Touching the body would defile his spirit, draining his life force and leaving him forsaken by the kami. But as he listened to her cries, his sympathy soared. And so, they buried the old woman together to ensure her safe passage into the spirit world. The burial was complete, but the taboo of death weighed heavily on the scholar. How could he have been so foolish to shirk his most important rule and corrupt his divine journey? After a tormented night, he resolved to go back to the shrine to cleanse himself. To his surprise, the usually silent temple was filled with people, all gathering around a medium who communicated directly with the kami. The man hid himself, not daring approach in case anyone glimpsed his polluted soul. But the medium had other ways of seeing and called him forward from the crowd. Ready to be forsaken, the scholar approached the holy woman. But the medium merely smiled. She took his impure hands in hers and whispered a blessing only he could hear, thanking him for his kindness. In that moment, the scholar discovered a great spiritual secret. Contamination and corruption are two very different things. Filled with insight, the scholar set himself back on his journey. But this time, he stopped to help those he met. He began to see the beauty of the spirit world everywhere he went, even in the city he had previously shunned. Others cautioned that he risked his kagare, but he never told them why he so freely mingled with the spirit, with the sick and the disadvantaged. for he knew that people could only truly understand Harai through a journey of their own. He learned that because we live in a modern world, because we live in a very, very corrupt world, it may attempt to contaminate our soul a bit when we let it drag us down. It may contaminate our body with poisons and toxins, but it does not have to corrupt our spirit, our soul. And as he said, this is an individual journey for everyone. Find your own Harai and journey, and may you be blessed in the joy that you find in everything around you. Well, that'll wrap it up for today. So I just wanted to give you a reminder, next week's show is our Halloween special. So I hope you'll tune in. It is about the darker side of the myths and legends from around the world about elves and fae and other kin. I think you'll enjoy it. A good little show for Halloween. All right. Thank you for listening, my friends, and until we are together again next week, may you be blessed by the elves. My name is Dr. Erindil Spindalelis, and I am the Elven Scholar. Namarie. Megovana, my Elven brothers and sisters. My name is the Elven Scholar. Come and join me on our YouTube channel, The Gentle Musings of an Elven Scholar, where we will explore all things mythic. We will delve into topics such as elven healing and diet, language, culture, spiritual depths, and practical how-to videos on living as an elf in today's world. Let's find that balance within our own true inner light. Thank you, my friends, for watching, and I hope you will take this journey with me.